Hello, everybody. I don't know if you can hear me. I am dealing with technical problems. So, we're going to try this again. Let me make sure my mic is working here. Yeah, it appears to be. Hopefully, you can hear me. And I'm just going to delay a while because many of you were on our YouTube channel waiting for the start of this draft on tap. And it actually started, but it was just hesitating. So now what I'm hoping to do is I am live, but I'm going to turn it over to our pre-recorded show. But I'm going to delay a little bit. Hopefully we had about, there it is. Bear Truth is there. He can hear. J2K, my man. Thank you, J2K, for the comments on the Barroom Draft Exclusives. Lots of good stuff. I responded in length to one of the comments, so hope I didn't bore you too much. But this, I'm going to repeat myself because this next show is pre-recorded. It's a little over an hour long, and it's with two guys who were at the Senior Bowl, and they both know their stuff. They deliver some great content. I was really excited about interviewing both of them. And so it's a pre-recorded show, and I'm going to start that momentarily. I'm just kind of waiting a little bit for more people to arrive who were on the other link. Hey, Laz, how are you? So I think you're really going to enjoy what these guys have to share. I actually visualized some of the stuff. They talked about some of the players, and I got together some Senior Bowl clips that I shot and some other clips that were either broadcast on NFL Network, and we're using those for educational informational purposes only, and also some other clips that I found on YouTube, and I attributed those clips to those YouTube channels in case you want to go there and see more of the tape that originated on that YouTube channel. So I apologize for the way I look. I wasn't planning on being on live tonight, but I will be on live tomorrow. Tomorrow, we got a good one for you. We're going to talk about Devin Hester. We're going to talk about the Super Bowl. We're going to get into whether the NFL is rigged. My man, Dan Aguirre, believes that the NFL is rigging things for my man, Patrick Mahomes. I love Patrick Mahomes, but I think he's earning everything. Now, whether the officials are, maybe calling things in favor of the team with the greatest superstar, that, unconsciously or subconsciously, there might be some truth to that. Thank you, Casey. There might be some truth to that, and we'll talk about that at length tomorrow on the Bear There Soul show. I'm really looking forward to that show and the new collaboration that we have with Mr. Shorty and Nomad. I think it's working out well. Lots of stuff happening behind the scenes to bring you an even more entertaining Bear Their Souls. And Dan and I are still, hey, Hair Bear, and Dan and I are still talking about doing our own shows from time to time, just the two of us, because we really enjoy doing those. And I think there's an audience that really appreciates those shows. So we'll be doing some of those in the future. For those of you, hey, Mr. Shorty, hola. So again, for those of you who are just joining us on this live portion, I am going to turn it over to the pre-recorded version that was supposed to air earlier, but the video was lagging for some reason. So I'm hoping by going live, we're not going to do that, and then I can dump this 6 gig file off my hard drive and store it away somewhere for posterity. So without yeah, J2K, you're absolutely right. It does seem like a little unconscious at times. Sub or on, it's all the same. So, and Dan and I had some really good discussions because he feels like the NBA officials used to side with Michael Jordan. He feels that there's a narrative that a lot of leagues like to put out there. And I just don't see that. I don't see these conspiracies going on with the league and the officiating, but we'll get into we'll get into that in depth tomorrow on the Bear Their Soul show. So without further ado, here goes. This is the original Draft on Tap that was supposed to air earlier tonight, pre-recorded for your enjoyment. So stick around in the chat. I'll be reading your comments. I'll probably be putting some of them up on the screen since I'm doing this live now, so to speak. All right, here we go. it is Aldo Gandia with this very special episode of Draft on Tap. And now Danny and Neil are not here. I am sorry. They will be back for our next show on the 22nd. But I do have two very special guests that I will introduce momentarily. But also, speaking of special guests, on our next show with Danny and Neil, we have got Nick Baumgarten, the senior writer from The Athletic. And if you are not familiar with this work, you should be. And you should be following him on Twitter because he's got great stuff like this.
All right, guys. Michigan State's Jaden Reed made more money or as much money as anybody at the Senior Bowl. Guy was outstanding. Here are the jet boosts. Anybody who watched him in college knows it. But look at that, man. That is separation. That's what that is. I mean, you cannot say even and leaving. Forget this. That's off coverage, and he just smokes the guy. That's day one. Forget it, right? I mean, easy. Nice throw. Here's the backside of it. Everybody who saw him at Michigan State had a good rapport there with Peyton Thorne, the quarterback, but was able to get to a lot of balls that a lot of other receivers couldn't, and was able to create separation constantly with other stuff. He's going to run a comeback here. You're going to watch him put the brakes on too. Boom, and get out. Another 20-mile-an-hour guy. Not the biggest. He's 5'10". He's 190-ish, something like that. He's going to go inside release and just run right by him. And I'm going to watch at the end here and watch how he – see, interference there, so we've already got one coming in. Separation through again, and then watch him readjust because this ball's not a very good throw. You watch him, he tracks the ball, readjusts, comes back to the ball, and he draws a flag. You're not going to see the flag come in, but they do throw a flag. This guy is a terrific football player, made himself a lot of money at the Senior Bowl. Stock up.
Don't forget, February 22nd, that's the next Draft on Tap show, and Nick Baumgartner from The Athletic will be joining Danny and Neil to get into it and have some robust draft conversation. And I think we're going to have that too now with our first guest, JP Acosta, writes for SB Nation. I met him actually about 2-3 years ago. He's a graduate of Northwestern Medill School of Journalism and was a guest on Buffon 55, helping us preview a Bears Jaguars game. This guy knows his stuff. He's an excellent interview. Let's go to it now. With me now is JP Acosta, writer for SB Nation. JP, how are you, my friend?
I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm doing great too. Did you have a good time down in Mobile?
Oh, it was awesome. It was my first time down in Mobile for the Senior Bowl. The food was terrific. I had some nice crawfish. That's very sneaky filling. It's sneaky filling food. You think you're getting you see them little small pieces when you break them open. It's like, oh, I can zoom through these. But then you're like, man, I'm sitting here full. I don't know if I can keep eating these. But overall, it was just a great time. I was able to talk ball with a lot of fun people, and I was able to watch some football. That's the best part.
Yeah, I tell all of our followers here they really should make it a trip down to Mobile for Senior Bowl week because you get access to the practice. You can watch the practices for free, I believe there still are, and the game is great. But the food is phenomenal down there. It's very underrated, and that was the birthplace. Mobile is the birthplace of Mardi Gras, so it's got that New Orleans feel. It's really a great little town to check out.
Yeah, it's a beautiful town. Like I said, Mardi Gras' birthday. They had the first couple of days of Mardi Gras while we were down there. It was real fun. They had Nelly out there for the Senior Bowl celebration for Mardi Gras. I thought that was wild. I didn't think Nelly would be in Mobile, Alabama for the Senior Bowl. But it was real cool. The food's awesome. I had this wonderful Krispy Kreme bread pudding down there. That is a game changer. It was mind-blowing to me. I never thought of those two concepts together. But now that I have it, I'm like, I'm going to try making that. Like, this is my new thing now.
I love it. I love it. And I also love the column that you recently wrote for SB Nation, some of the players that you thought were risers based on their Senior Bowl performances. And we won't go through all of the players, but I would like to get your take, as we basically cater to the Chicago Bears fans. And so some of the position players that you highlighted, I think are going to be of interest to Bears fans. And so under running backs, you highlighted a guy that I fell in love with during the week and another player who by the end of the week I was falling in love with. And the first guy is Tyjae Spears, the running back out of Tulane. What did you see out of him? What impressed you? Tell us all about Tyjae.
So Tyjae Spears, of course, from that Tulane team that had a really great season this year, won the Cotton Bowl, beat USC. Tyjae Spears was kind of the engine behind that offense. And watching him down in Mobile, he had a second gear that not a lot of running backs in Mobile had. There was a play, it was real popular on Twitter, where he was against Servassier Dennis in one-on-ones. He did a little angle route, and just absolutely lost Servassier Dennis. He was really good in pass catching all week. There were some issues in pass protection, but you can tell when he had the ball in his hands, he's got a different level gear. He has got a different speed to him, and you could see that all throughout the week. You could see the ability to turn a 3-yard play into a 30-yard gain. He is a big play waiting to happen.
Yeah. And then the other player you mentioned is Evan Hull, running back from Northwestern. Is a guy that, frankly, I should know more about, given, that he plays in my backyard here in Chicago. But Northwestern had a lackluster season. I didn't really pay much attention to them. But during the week, he caught my eye, and I'm thinking, let's see what he does on Saturday. Well, on Saturday, he was like a candidate for player of the game. Your thoughts on Evan Hull?
So the Evan Hull story for his senior season at Northwestern was he led the team in rushing yards, and he was also second on the team in receiving yards. He was their most consistent form of offense. And in Mobile, he was probably the most consistent back on both teams. He was able to withstand a lot of issues in the pass protection drills. He was really good in one-on-ones. And one thing that really stood out to me while he was there was he has a really nice burst. I don't think the long speed is the same level of Tyjae Spears, but his burst in getting from 0 to 60 is extremely quick. And it was something that the national team defense really couldn't handle. They were kind of confused as to why like this little 5'9", 215-pound running back, which is blowing straight through the gap as soon as he saw it. That's one of the things that stands out about Evan Hull is that burst and that acceleration and the ability to make a big play happen. Of course, the long speed is an issue, but one thing that he showed is he can be a 3-down back. He worked on special teams as well. He really stood out this week as a guy who made a really big name for himself. His stock is shooting up right now.
Indeed. Now, do you think that any one or both of these guys can be a number one back in the NFL?
So I don't think they're going to be number one backs. I think the questions for Tyjae Spears, he's got a lot of work to do in the pass protection part of the game. And he did have a torn ACL and meniscus in 2020, I believe. The medicals at the combine are going to be a huge question for him. I don't think they'll be number one running backs, but I think they're going to be real solid number 2 or number 3s. Like Tyjae Spears can come in and be your receiving back. He can be your guy who you need a big play. Evan Hull can be your third down pass protection or third down receiving guy, and he's going to generate yards. He's going to get you that first down no matter what. I think both these guys are going to be really, really solid guys to have a part of your offense, have a part of that running back room, even if they're not the number one running back.
Yeah, it's interesting about Tyjae is that, and you're right, the medicals on him at the combine are going to be huge for him. But I'll tell you, just the eye test, boy, with his movements, his quick feet, he's phenomenal in terms of what he can do with his feet. So, I'm with you there. The pass blocking is going to be an issue, but this guy, he's going to deserve as many touches as he can possibly get, because this guy is really a treat to watch.
He is. He is so fun to have on an offense, because you can tell any play can be a big one. Any moment you can turn it into a huge gain. You can turn it into a big touchdown. He has those moments, like you said, where with his foot quickness, where he can stop on a dime. He did it against USC in the Cotton Bowl, where he went under the defender instead of like around him, and that was really cool. He did it in Mobile this past week. So you can see some of the things that he brings to the table and see that acceleration, that burst, and the speed. That's going to make him a day 2 draft pick.
Yeah. Now let's talk about wide receivers. You wrote about Tank Dell, Nathaniel Tank Dell. Do you know why they call him Tank? Because he doesn't look like a tank to me.
He plays like a tank, man. That's probably why he plays like a tank. He might not be the biggest. He might not be the biggest guy, but he plays like a tank. It's like calling the big dude tiny.
Yeah, I get you. Okay.
Those things.
Okay. But yeah, he put in quite a week. I mean, he was noticeable. I think from the very first practice on, he was really creating highlight clips from the practices. Tell me what you know about Tank Dell, and tell me where you think do you think he's a day 3, or do you think he did enough at the Senior Bowl to maybe sneak into day 2?
So Tank Dell is extremely productive. He was among the top 5 receivers in the nation in receptions, receiving yards, and receiving touchdowns this year, despite being 5'8", 163 pounds. One thing that Tank Dell does extremely well is his ability to create separation in short areas, where he uses his short area quickness, his foot speed. That was evident the entire week of the Senior Bowl. He was just cooking defenders and one-on-ones in those short areas because he's able to get so low to the ground. And he's able to stop on a dime, turn on a dime, and he's able to create that separation real easy. I don't think he's going to be a burner where he's going to run like a 4.3. He doesn't have that kind of speed, but he can create separation in those short areas, and he's going to be able to get open. I think he did enough to make himself a day 2 pick. I think the height and the weight is going to be a real issue. I think the last guy was drafted at that height and weight was Tutu Atwell, but he's a much better all-around receiver than Tutu Atwell. So I think he's done enough to make himself a day 2, day 3 pick, just because you want that guy on your team. You put him in the slot and he's going to cook guys in the short to intermediate areas. He's going to be an instant offense kind of guy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, love it. Good stuff. Jaden Reed out of Michigan State was another guy you highlighted, and you noted that he's probably a slot exclusive guy. Tell me why you think that and your overall impressions of Reed.
So Reed actually said he's gonna be a slot only at the NFL, and that's being 5'10", 191. It's gonna be real difficult to live on the outside unless you're Stephon Diggs or a receiver like that. What Jaden Reed does so well is he can create separation in bursts where he's bursting across the field or he's bursting down the field. There's a route that he had in the Senior Bowl game on a crosser where he just goes right across the field. Jay Ward cannot keep up with him. Big 15-yard gain. That's what Jaden Reed does. Jaden Reed can create separation that way instead of like Tank Dell where he's using foot quickness and dropping his weight and turning to create separation. Jaden Reed is more, I'm going to get past you with that burst and acceleration and create that separation. So I think he did a lot to help himself this week. I think, like I said, the slot only thing was definitely not going to help him. I think the hands will be a little bit of a question. I don't think it's a big of a question as a lot of the guys that were at the Senior Bowl in Mobile, but he's definitely, again, going to be another really good number 3 receiver for a team that's looking to add some juice to their receiving room from the slot.
This year's running back crew coming out into the draft, I think it's pretty strong. And the wide receivers, I don't think is as strong as it was last year. Do you kind of agree with that take?
Yeah, I think this receiver class, instead of having as much wide receiver ones as we've seen the past 2 classes, I mean, it's really hard to get a Jamar Chase or a Garrett Wilson or even a Justin Jefferson. Those guys don't come along very often. But you're going to see a lot of really good wide receiver 2s come out of this draft, really good wide receiver 3s. They might not be the most dominant receivers that are going to play for your team, but they're going to be extremely reliable. They're going to be a guy who will come in. They're not going to put up the gaudy numbers, but they're always going to be able to get open. They're going to be guys you really want on your team. I think one of the guys I highlighted like that is Michael Wilson from Stanford. He's going to have a lot of questions to answer at the combine about his injury history, but he was the best receiver in Mobile the entire week. He was able to create separation. He looked fluid. He was 6'1", 215. He's going to be able to play outside and inside. That's a guy who made a really big name for himself. He's going to be a very solid wide receiver 2 or 3 in the NFL.
I was really impressed with the play of a lot of the tight ends down at the Senior Bowl, but probably the guy who really walked away helping himself in the NFL draft is the guy you highlighted again on your SB Nation article, Payne Durham out of Purdue. Talk to us about him.
That's a big dude. That is a really big dude. He's not just big, he's also wide. And one thing because he uses his physique and his long arms really well in the red zone and in contested catch situations. Against the DBs this week, against the safeties, he was able to use his frame to create separation despite not having the quickest feet or the most agile hips. He's just really big, and he's able to create separation just because I'm bigger than you and you're not as big as me. It's like playing basketball with your 8-year-old brother outside. Like they're not as big as you. You should get all the rebounds, but one thing Payne Durham did really well, he was able to high point the ball and catch a lot of passes in the red zone. You saw the highlight play in the Senior Bowl on Saturday. He went up, caught the ball, got crushed by the corner coming back over the top. He actually did that same play on that same route in practice yesterday, the day before the Senior Bowl, where Jake Haener threw him a pass, perfect pass, back shoulder. Durham caught it. Riley Moss came over, hit him so hard he lost his helmet, caught the ball, still caught it for a touchdown. That's where Payne Durham's going to be at his best. He's going to be a big red zone target. You get him the ball in that area, he'll jump up and go up and get it.
Yeah, his blocking game is good. He's a very solid prospect. Let's talk about the offensive line. Another area of need. The Bears need like everything. When you were studying at Northwestern, did you see any Bears games?
Yeah, I did. I had the displeasure of watching some. Man, they're going in the right direction.
I hear you. Dewan Jones is a mammoth human being. I mean, the longest wingspan in Senior Bowl history. This guy is huge. Now, a lot of people are saying, including Greg Gabriel, who is our former Chicago Bears scouting director and a member here at the Barroom Network, saying that he is not suitable for the Chicago Bears scheme because it's a outside zone offense, and you need a guy who's got the athletic skills to get on the move. But I got to tell you, some of the tape that I saw from his Senior Bowl practice, it's like the guy was really working on improving his quickness. Your overall take on Jones?
So, yeah, it's going to be really hard for him to be in that kind of outside zone scheme because, yeah, being 380 pounds and 6'8", those guys you don't really find guys who move like that. Only guys that move like that are like LeBron James, and he's in the NBA and one of the best players of all time. You're not going to find that kind of guy playing football. Dewan Jones, what he does so well, you get him in a gap scheme, power running, get him downhill. He was crushing guys in inside run on those power runs. He would just cave in the entire side of the line. One thing that really stood out to me in his pass protection actually was how quick his feet were in the pass protection. He wasn't very challenged by speed by the national team D linemen. They were a lot more power guys, but when he was faced with that threat, he shut it down immediately, and he uses his long arms really well. Like it's one thing to have long arms, it's another to have them and use them very well. Isaiah Foskey tried a long arm move that he does really well all the time. Dewan Jones just shut that down immediately, snatch trap, put him in the dirt twice, and it's just like, yeah, man, that's what he can do. He's a big, powerful guy, but he showed a little bit of quickness in the passing game that I thought was really impressive. But like I said, you want him in a power run scheme, get him downhill, get him hitting people immediately. Don't have him running towards an area. Send him towards that guy and watch that guy go flying into the stands.
Yeah, love it. Love it. I want to jump to the center position because one of my Senior Bowl crushes was John Michael Schmitz, the center out of Minnesota. Watching him play was so much fun. I mean, this guy loves to bury his defenders. He likes to drive them to the ground, and he's probably talking shit to them too while they're down there. He's a nasty man. When I interviewed him, I told him, you play with a little bit of hostility, and he smiled and said, yeah, that's the University of Minnesota style. So tell me what you saw out of John Michael. He's another one of the players you highlighted in your article.
That's a strong dude for 306. He's one of the lighter guys at the Senior Bowl this week, and which is expected because he's a center, but that's a strong dude. You're not going to be able to root him out. He's able to anchor really well and drop weight. He was so powerful this week. It's kind of stunned me a little bit. And he was able to move as well. He was able to routinely get to the second level, get to the linebackers on outside zone runs. He had a really good week. And one of the things that I thought was really impressive was how quickly he was able to pick up stunts and twists. There was a rep where he and Osiris Torrance passed off a stunt, and it was textbook. It was awesome to see because those guys had just started playing with each other like 2 days before, and they're already picking up stunts like that. So John Michael Schmitz is another one of those guys. He's a nasty dude. He wants to get guys into the ground, but he's also incredibly smart. He's an incredibly smart guy, knows about angles and protections. He's going to be a really good center in the NFL for a long time.
That's a great analysis of John Michael Schmitz. Yeah, I would love to see him in navy blue and burnt orange. Let's turn over to the defense. One of the huge needs for the Chicago Bears defense is a 3-tech defensive tackle. I looked at Keanu Benton from Wisconsin. I said, maybe this is the answer to our problems here, particularly if we don't draft the kid out of Georgia, Payne. Why am I forgetting his name?
Jalen Carter.
Jalen Carter. Thank you. It's bad when you get old, brother. But Benton really helped himself, and you highlighted him again too.
Yeah, Keanu Benton is another one of those guys where you see him walking around. It's like, oh, that's a big dude. He came in around 314 pounds. He's got long arms, got real long arms. You're not going to be able to root him out of the run game very easily. One thing that I wanted to see him do this week was show off a little bit more in the pass rush department. I think he didn't get to show that off very much at Wisconsin, but in Mobile, he was able to show some really nice stuff in terms of counter moves. He had a nice swim move that I thought was really cool to see. And that's something that he can use because he has such long arms. Just get those arms over the shoulder pad and keep moving past them. I thought he had a really good week. I think the run game, he's already a ready-made run defender. He's a ready-made guy who's going to come in, easily stop the run. That's if you're from the Big Ten and you're a defensive tackle, you better know how to stop the run. But one thing where I think he's still developing, and the development might be happening quicker than we think, is in the pass rush, showing off those pass rush moves and being able to time them correctly and use them correctly. So he had a really good week in the pass rush department. We already knew what he was as a run defender, but showing off he can rush the passer with a variety of moves really helped him out.
Fantastic. One of the guys, and by the way, you can tell that you went to Northwestern because in your article you phonetically for us dummies, you phonetically spelled out Adetomiwa Adibara. Did I get it close at least?
Adetomiwa Adibare.
There you go, Adibare. There you go. You spelled it out for us. I'm gonna rehearse it a few times, and hopefully it'll come to some use because I would love to see him play for the Chicago Bears. He had a really good week. Tell us what you saw.
He was arguably the best defensive lineman in Mobile for the week. He came in really. It's a really interesting build of a guy. He's 6'1", 284 pounds, but he's got 34-inch arms, and he is rocked up. He is a muscular guy. He uses that leverage and that arm length to his advantage in the run game, where despite being 284 pounds, guys are not able to move him in the run game. He's able to get under defenders, get his hands in their chest, and when he extends, he creates such a large gap with those long arms where he's already beating guys in the run game. He's able to use that quickness as well. One thing that I also want to see, like Benton, was the ability to use pass rush moves. And what he did was he loves the long arm move from the inside, which is natural because he has really long arms. But he showed a nice couple of counter moves. An inside spin I thought worked really well for him. He showed off a nice club rip move. He did a couple of good things to Cody Mock where I was really impressed. And when that bull rush works, man, there's the video of him bull rushing Jared Patterson from Notre Dame. It looks like that. It looks like that. He was one of the most impressive guys for Northwestern this year, and that's speaking on a team that's going to probably have a top 10 pick in Peter Skoronski. He is, like I said, a ready-made run defender. He kind of reminds me of the Pokemon Graveler. He's a big rock with long arms, and it's going to be real hard to move him. And he had a great week in Mobile.
Yeah, I love your excitement about him. He deserves every bit of it. I want to move over to the edge position because one of the guys, Danny Shimon, one of the draft scouts here, and Ostapchinski has been talking about the kid from Iowa State, Will McDonough IV. What an freaky athlete, man.
He's an insane athlete. Comes in 6'3", 241, real long arms, 35-inch arms. But one thing that he does so well is it's not as much burst and bend as it is burst and counter moves to that burst, where he's going with an outside speed move, but his spin move to the inside is one of the coolest moves that any pass rusher has in this draft, where he's not exactly using a lot of bend, but he's able to get tackles off balance with his speed and acceleration off the edge, where he just spins right back inside. It looks like a little whirling dervish. He spins right back inside, and the offensive tackle can't do anything about it. He was so impressive this week. One thing I thought was really good for him was showing off that he's very fluid in pass coverage. He had a couple nice pass breakups, 7-on-7. Iowa State had him playing literally all over the front. They had him lined up inside the tackle, almost head up over the guard at times. They had him lined up over the edge. They had him lined up at off-ball linebacker, showing that versatility in Mobile while also combining that with the pass rush prowess he showed. I am very worried. Despite being 241, he's a slim 241. Like, he looks like a basketball player. When I talked with him in Mobile, he said he played a lot of basketball growing up, did a lot of martial arts, did a lot of soccer. You can tell that he's a slimmer 241, and you can get into him easily in the run game. But if you got that guy on your team on third down and you have that chess piece, you can move around the defense, you will always have the advantage because he's just so good in multiple different spots.
Yeah, JP, you nailed it, man. When they had the press conferences where they had the players line up in the booth, and when he came in, I was waiting for him because I wanted to see what he had to say, and I was really shocked at how thin he looked. You're right; he is a thin 241. It almost reminded me a little bit of Leonard Floyd, who was with the Rams now and played with the Bears. But a little bit more, McDonald, what I saw in practices, a little bit more impressive than Floyd, just because of that burst that you talked about. So very interesting player to take a look at. And again, I agree with you. This guy is a chess piece. And as Danny Shimon likes to say, if the scouts and coaches are beating the table for him to be drafted, you first have to answer the question, okay, how are you going to use this guy to make sure we don't make the same mistake we did with Leonard Floyd?
Yeah.
So good stuff there. Let's head over to the cornerbacks. The one guy that I really would love to get your thoughts on is Darius Rush out of South Carolina. Really didn't know much about him, but he was very impressive, I thought, all week. Tell us what you thought about Rush.
Yeah, Darius Rush went a little bit unheralded despite having a first-round corner opposite him in Cam Smith in South Carolina. But in Mobile, he was amazing in terms of improvement every day. He was kind of rough day one. He was going up against Tank Dell, and Tank Dell beat almost everybody. But he improved every day. He was able to get his hands on the ball. He was able to get a couple of interceptions every day. One thing that stands out about Rush is how patient he is. At South Carolina, they play a lot of off ball. They play a lot of off man, cover three. He's not going to be a press corner. And what you could tell in Mobile was he was so patient in letting the guy dictate what was going to happen and then reacting off of that. It wasn't as much guessing as it is, I'm going to react to this really quick and make sure I'm in the right position to make a play. There was a play he had against Princeton receiver Andre Yoshivas, who was a very, very fast individual. And he was able to stay patient throughout. He didn't panic because of the speed, turns back inside, and he's able to get the interception. That's what I think Darius Rush is. I think he's a great off-man, cover three guy. You want him recognizing routes and playing off of that. I think he had a real great week in doing that. And there's another guy I'm going to have to go back and watch some more because he looked really impressive.
Yeah, indeed. Anyone else, whether he was in your article or maybe not, or maybe part of the honorable mentions that you'd like to talk about before we cut you loose?
Yeah, I think Stanford corner, Kai Blue Kelly. He was one of my honorable mentions. Oh, yeah. That's a fun player. I worry about the long speed a little bit, but when they switch to cover 2, cover 4, playing those types of too high shells where he was able to play the flats and play a zone more, he is so instinctive and so smart. He picked off a couple of passes in practice just as the flat defender in cover 2 and basically baited the quarterback into throwing the inside hook, and he jumps it and makes a great interception. That's one of the things you can tell he's the son of a former player. You can tell the way he thinks, the way he prepares. You can tell he's somebody in his family played before, And he did. His dad played in the NFL for over a decade, I think. But watching him, you can tell if your team plays a lot of zone, plays a lot of cover two, quarters kind of schemes, that's a guy you want as your outside cornerback. He's so smart, so instinctive, and is willing to take risks.
I love that you brought him up because he was a guy that first came to my attention with the buzz I was hearing around me. I kept hearing the name. Oh, this guy's good. He's jumping around. He's doing this and so forth. I go, look at my program here. What number is he? And start following him. I'm like, yeah, he's living up to the hype there. So he's definitely a guy to keep an eye on for this upcoming draft. Before I get you out of here, got to talk about your Jaguars. You're a big fan of them. They look like they have set a foundation here for long-term success. What do you think they're going to do during this offseason? And where's your hope meter that this team could be in the Super Bowl in the next 2-3 years, maybe even next season?
My hope meter is extremely high, and this is something I'm not used to as a Jaguars fan. The hope is extremely high, and I think it's because we have two essential things. We have the coach, Doug Peterson. We also have the quarterback, Trevor Lawrence. The 2017 season when they made the AFC Championship, they didn't have the quarterback. So after that season, you kind of felt like, I don't know, you have to see something from the quarterback, and ultimately you didn't. But this year, you have the quarterback. So that's bringing up a lot of the hope. I think in the offseason, one of the things they're going to have to address is re-signing all these guys. Evan Ingram was on 1-year deal, is going to be a free agent. You're probably going to bring him back. Evan Ingram had a career year in Jacksonville as a tight end. He also set Jaguars tight end records for receiving yards and receptions for a tight end this year. I think Shaquille Griffin is going to be an interesting guy that might end up being cut. He didn't play very well this season before getting hurt. He might end up being a cap casualty. Arden Key was on a 1-year deal. You're going to have to worry about bringing him back. Ultimately, this offseason is about developing the young guys on defense. Travon Walker, Devin Lloyd have to take that next step in order for the defense to get any better. I also think they're going to need to pick another corner. I think that's ultimately corner or tight end is going to be where they go with that first-round draft pick. I think I'm leaning more corner right now just because of the way they lost these games in the postseason. The way they lost to the Chiefs was where you really didn't have an inside corner. You really didn't have a slot guy. Darius Williams was good on the outside and inside, but it didn't matter where he lined up as long as that third guy just wasn't up to par as well. Trey Herndon normally was a starter there. He's also going to be a free agent. So going into the offseason, they're going to have to address that position and then figure out what you're going to do with Evan Ingram. I think he's going to definitely be coming back. And then outside of that, just develop. They're a young team. They were one of the 3 youngest teams in the NFL this year, and you made it to the divisional round of the playoffs. Now it's about taking that next step. The young guys taking the next step, and again, surrounding them with just a few more pieces. And of course, Calvin Ridley coming back is going to be a huge deal too.
They picked 25, 57, and 89. If you were making the picks, who would you love to see fall to 25 and have him become a member of the Jags?
So at 25, he's gaining a lot of steam. I do not know if he's going to be there, but Devin Witherspoon is my guy. That's one of my favorite corners in this draft. He's physical, he's instinctive, he's tough. He can play on the outside and inside. He can play man zone coverage. A lot of what defensive coordinator Mike Caldwell did a lot was he's going to show and disguise a lot of different things. He's going to bring guys into the box. He's going to play a lot of 5-man fronts. That requires your DBs to be really good and really instinctive. It mimics a lot of what Todd Bowles has done in Tampa, where they play a lot of physical DBs. You want them dictating the pace and the flow instead of a team kind of like the Vikings or like the Fangio system where they're going to play a lot of off coverage and let the offense dictate it and then adjust to that and blanket them. What Todd Bowles and Mike Caldwell do is, no, we're going to set this pace. And I think that's what Devin Witherspoon is. Devin Witherspoon is a pace and tone setter at corner, which is very rare to find. I think that's the guy I really, really want there. If he's not there, I wouldn't be mad with going Kelee Ringo from Georgia, or if Christian Gonzalez or Joey Porter Jr. fall at that spot. I think that's where they go. Then second round, I think they're going tight end. Doug Peterson loves 12 personnel. He's picked a lot of tight ends before. I would keep my eye out on Tucker Kraft from South Dakota State. Dallas Goedert was a Doug Peterson pick who went to South Dakota State. There's already a pipeline there for Doug Peterson. Tucker Kraft might end up being a Jaguar. He's just solid tight end too. He's going to do a lot of good things well, and it allows the Jaguars to be a lot more versatile.
I got to tell you, I know my co-hosts Neil Stopchinski and Danny Shimon are going to be very envious of me that I got to interview you, because they love to talk with guys who know their stuff. And JP Acosta, you know your stuff. Excellent interview. I really appreciate your time and expertise. I'm going to be bothering you again and again as the draft nears. I would love to hear more from you. Okay, brother?
Thank you. Anytime, man. I'd love to come on and talk ball.
All right. Hey everyone, want to let you know that Danny Shimon and Neil Stopchinski are co-hosting a private draft talk party. That's right, it's private. For 90 minutes, you can join the Draft on Tap co-host and get the type of quality draft talk you yearn for as much as I yearn for my Maker's Mark. You lead the discussion. Talk about your favorite prospect and get Danny and Neil's analysis. If you want, share your favorite mock with the guys, or bring up a prospect off everyone's radar. The cost is only a $10 donation, or as we say here at the Barroom, a $10 cover charge. You'll get 90 minutes of your personalized draft talk and even get a copy of the video to share with your friends. Now, there are only 7 slots available. That's right, only 7, so you must act fast. What you need to do is email me at aldo@bearsbarroom.com. Tell me you want to party with the guys, and I'll get you the information you need. The party is Wednesday, March 1st at 8 p.m. Central, so don't hesitate. It's only a $10 donation, the cost of a beer and a shot of whiskey. All right, with me now is Luke Winstel. And Luke, you've got quite the resume going on, so I'm going to let you tell our followers here who you're working with and what you do.
Yeah, thank you. First off, appreciate you having me on. And in terms of my previous work, I work as a broadcaster on ESPN Plus, covering some college sports, all the way from you see basketball, producing football, and just a lot of sports that I see there. So looking through the college landscape there, and then also I'm a recruiting analyst for Clemson Sports Talk. I cover the team as well, Clemson football, as a beat writer. So that's a lot of my day-to-day now.
I saw you down at the Senior Bowl. Everywhere I turned around, you were there, grabbing players for interviews and talking to other people and collecting all sorts of information. So I thought it would be fun to have you on and get some of your thoughts about what transpired at the Senior Bowl. And as you know, we're a Chicago Bears platform here, and the Ryan Poles really has his work cut out for him in terms of restoring some talent on the team after he has torn it down. We know he can tear down a team efficiently. It yielded the #1 draft pick, but now we got to see if he can build it up. So he's got to start at the offensive and defensive line. So I'd love for you to share with us some of the offensive linemen that you saw that could be guys who are either players that can play immediately on the offensive line for the Chicago Bears, or maybe after a year or two of development could be big contributors. So let's start with the offensive line.
Gotcha. Well, it's a good place to start because offensive line and defensive line were some of the deepest, if not the 2 deepest positions in the group. So there's a lot of different areas for us to attack this question here. Obviously, we're not talking about anybody at #1 overall right now with what we saw at the Senior Bowl. Nobody at that level. So these mid-round or second, third round selections are where I'm focused on here. And I would look at one of the names that I was most impressed with is Cody Mauch. It's not any huge surprise, I think, for you to hear that name. But the thing that we get that's good at the Senior Bowl is we see the guys, but we get to talk to them. And with Mauch, the one thing that was impressive, he's very likable. And when you ask him about his season highlights, he's not one that puts the spotlight on himself. He says, talks about the team, but when you really try to press him to talk about himself, he's one that loves finishing blocks. He talks about that a lot, and says it with a smile.
I like finishing people to the ground too, so in any capacity I can finish a block, whether it's just through the whistle or finish a guy on the ground, I'm going to do that.
And he's very confident. He was voted by his peers as the offensive lineman of the week. I thought there were a couple of reps on day one where it was like, okay, he's getting used to that level of competition. He'd get beat by some of the guys in the D-line group that were stacked. But He showed improvement, showed high character, and I think that's somebody in the second round, maybe around that pick 56 area for Chicago, if he's still there, or maybe you like him enough to trade up. He's one. DeJuan Jones might be available in that area as well.
Luke, before you get off Cody, let me add that, he was definitely a sight to behold at the Senior Bowl. I mean, the guy, besides being huge, has got the long red hair, and as you said, he's got a great personality. He loves to finish guys. And, I thought his performance was commendable, particularly when you look at the fact that they were throwing a lot at him, so that he was playing tackle, guard. I think he even played a little center on a few snaps and stuff. So he had quite the busy week. And he's somebody that I've been keeping my eye on.
Absolutely. I think any offensive lineman, it's their dream to run the ball all the time. In North Dakota State, we ran the ball probably 50 times a game. Like, there's nothing better than that. So I love to see stuff like that. Anytime you can put your hand in the ground and then just go run block, it's good for an offensive lineman.
Do you feel like that fits your skill set a little bit better if you were to get drafted to a team that does run the ball a little bit more often?
I definitely think, I'm confident in my run blocking skills. So if it's a team that runs the ball a lot more, I feel very confident there. And, been working a lot on my pass pro as well. So if I do end up going to a team that's going to pass the ball, I'll be ready to do that as well.
So tell me about the big guy, the really big guy.
Well, and these guys I mentioned, they're probably the two hardest guys to miss out of the entire group we saw because, Cody, we're calling him Big Red, this huge guy with the red hair. And then you've got DeJuan, who's just – you see somebody that's 6'8", weighing in around 380 with a 7-foot, 5.5-inch wingspan. You're not going to miss him. And he, a lot of times had some kind of sunglasses on too, so he was not a hard guy to pick out of a crowd.
That's right.
But Jones was the type of player that – you remember The Blind Side when the guy got blocked all the way off the field on the sideline?
Oh, yeah.
We saw that from DeJuan Jones this week. And they were running a play closer to the sideline on that hash, but he blocks a player all the way out of bounds, and they eventually just have to get him to stop blocking the guy because there were some battles that he just annihilated. And the length is something that, even you look at his college game a little bit, and coming into the Senior Bowl, he was maybe a third or fourth rounder. I understand him sliding up towards the second. I'm not sure how I feel about first round for him yet. I think it's a bit of an overreaction from some people. But I think in that second round territory, that's somebody that with those raw traits combined with some of the plays that you see on tape that are these flashes that you say, if we could get that consistency out of somebody, that could be a franchise tackle for a team.
Yeah. The thing about DeJuan is that, it always bugs me when you hear the term that he is not a fit for the scheme, because when you have a really good player, you should maybe change the scheme and figure out a way to get him in. But with this outside zone offense that the Bears run, him getting out and running, with that big body, he proved to me actually that he could do it. But, when you're that big, how often can you do it? How long can you last, at such an athletic position that the Bears demand? But he is definitely someone to watch because he, Greg Gabriel, who is a former scouting director of the Chicago Bears, he works with us here at the Barroom. He says there's no doubt that DeJuan is going to be a really good NFL player, but he's just not going to be one for the Bears because the scheme doesn't fit. So, and then as Greg jokingly said, watch him be drafted in the first round by the Bears. That's the way it goes, right? Yeah. So what you got, Luke?
Well, so you talk about standouts. So those are a couple of the ones that really stood out. I know John Michael Schmitz is a guy that, because he plays in the middle, might not get as much buzz as a big tackle or somebody that we've talked about already. But Schmitz is one that, did good work inside the defensive tackle group, interior D-line group, I thought was good. And for Schmitz, he wasn't somebody that made the more viral type of plays that really stand out on film, but when you look at his overall, so it may not stand out one specific day, but when you look at his body of work, day 1, day 2, day 3, into some of that, and you say, wow, when's the last time I saw him get beat? Because it didn't happen very often. So Schmitz is one that was consistent. He wasn't, super talkative or anything, but he was somebody that really seemed to put his head down, go to work. And even though the media may not be buzzing a ton about him like they are about some other guys, I know people are talking about him though, but he's somebody that you take and you say that could be the type of center that you rely on for quite some time in your team, and you feel very comfortable with what he can do in the middle.
I fell in love with him on the second day of practice. It started to kind of accumulate, like you said. It's like, oh, this guy, he's starting to make an impression out here, and he's got a really strong personality on the field. I talked to him after one of the practices. He was kind of mellow and low-key, but on the field, he's got a nasty disposition. He loves to finish his blocks, drive people to the ground, and he'll talk a little crap, and he really enjoys it. He's a special player, and one I wouldn't mind seeing in navy blue and burnt orange. Who else you got?
Wanya Morris, if we're going to look further down the board, I know we're talking about top 100 guys there, but if we look a little further down, wasn't a perfect week by any means for Morris, but it was a week where I thought, especially day 3, when they were running the stunt drills and he's picking up some of these guys and showing footwork at the tackle spot and showing footwork that I didn't really know that he had to that level. Being able to overall withstand some of the tough tests he got, like Ali Gay from LSU that we saw very athletic, very long. He was able to hold up against him. He was able to really stop some guys up in game. Guys would be trying to rush around him, and he'd pin them on the ground. So there were some moments. There was also a moment in the game where he gave up a sack. So this is why I say we're not talking about a day 2 guy here, but we're talking about day 3, maybe a 6th round type of pick that you develop on the offensive line. He's got the physical frame. And he's somebody that showed that he can step up to this level of competition, played at Oklahoma, and he's a bit of a sleeper for me. Again, there's some stuff to clean up in his game, so it's not as clear of a picture as we got on some other guys. But there were some reps that were flashes that I said, okay, at the tackle spot, that could be a value guy.
Excellent stuff. I haven't studied him as much, and I definitely will now on your recommendation. So those day 3 guys, as we said earlier, they're just so vital for an organization like the Chicago Bears. You got to hit on guys either that they contribute now or somewhere down the line. You put them in the practice squad if necessary. And hopefully they can contribute immediately on special teams. So those are the kinds of guys of huge interest to Chicago Bears fans. Anybody that can help. Who do you got?
Defensively, there were some ups and downs here in terms of guys that, we have our expectations. We make our little boards. Like I've got mine here to make sure I can keep track of everything we talk about. And there were some guys towards the top of my board that, whether it, D end or outside linebacker, however they might fit a scheme, I really had high expectations for. And I thought Andre Carter and Keon White, Carter from Army, White from Georgia Tech, were 2 that I had high expectations for. I didn't think those were met. But there were some guys that I didn't quite have as high expectations for that now I'm looking at a guy like Keanu Benton from Wisconsin. All of a sudden, moving from maybe a fringe top 100 guy, maybe he's 3rd round or so. Now I'm looking at him in the 2nd. That's someone that, who knows, maybe he's available for Chicago in that 2nd round range. And he is a disruptor inside. He's got good hands. He showcased a quick spin move. So Benton was one that I say, okay, somewhere on day 2, somebody is getting a defensive lineman that has the quickness to really blow up plays in the backfield. He's the type of guy that could blow up a handoff as it's being given to the running back because he's able to move so quickly.
Yeah, that type of disruptive middle of the line defensive lineman is someone that is vital for this Matt Eberflus defense. He runs the old cover 2 with new blemishes to it, or blemishes or new whatever to it.
Yeah.
And so he's somebody that really caught my eye too. He's a guy that I didn't highlight on my list of players to take a close look at, but I saw some of the highlights of his work in day 1 or day 2 of practice, and then all of a sudden I said, okay, I got to keep an eye on this guy, and he's an up and comer, no doubt.
Yeah, and if you remember the name Chuck Smith, he trains with Chuck down in Atlanta, so that's one of those connections that I look at and say, he's in some good hands as well in terms of who he's working with.
Great.
But otherwise, this is a tough name, but Ade Adebawore, you know where I'm going with this.
Yes, I'm glad you tried to pronounce it as opposed to me.
Yeah, and we had him. He was one of those that when we do the video interview, we're like, "Hey, could you just give us your name just so we get it?" And he was a fun one in terms of one of the plays. He had one of those viral type moments where he blocks the player out of the back of the end zone and then keeps blocking him and even starts a little scuffle after because he kept going. That's the type of player that, as you're looking to build a roster, you need those different kinds of attitudes. And whether you know the guy personally or not, plays like that we saw show you some of that personality of, okay, maybe he's super nice and shakes your hand off the field, but this is who he is on the field. And that's the type of player that I think day two, somebody kind of like Keanu Benton, someone's going to get a gym that has those aspects. I don't see him as much as a pass rusher or an edge rusher, but somebody interior that can really blow up some run plays. Every team needs us like that. And I think situationally is going to be a good fit on day two for a team.
Yeah, I am kicking myself that I didn't get over in time to grab an interview with him because, yeah, he was one of the more impressive players on Senior Bowl practice week and somebody that already Chicago Bears fans, just based on that viral video, and I'm sure they saw some of his Northwestern games, but primarily based on that viral video, they're saying, oh, okay, we really want this guy. And one of the friends of the network here, Bellissimo, does a great job of breaking down tape. He has been touting him for several months now. So definitely a guy who would look good in a little south of Evanston, where he played at Northwestern, and over at Soldier Field. What else you got on the defense?
Defensively, now if we're going to move a little further down the board and talk about some day three types, out of Louisville, Yaya Diaby. His story is a little fascinating to me because he's one of really several guys that started JUCO that we saw at the Senior Bowl that were the type of players that I don't even think – he might have been a two-star at most out of high school. So he was not on radars until the past couple of years, transfers to Louisville. And you look at his body, the way he's developed physically, he's got these long arms, broad shoulders, one of those edge players that you always look for, that super athletic, big build on the defensive side. Well, go ahead and check that box. He's a lengthy, I think it was an 81-inch wingspan that he came in with. So that tells you a lot of, you look at the frame and then you look at some of the plays that the thing that I match up with the frame is ability. He showed the ability to even use a couple of moves on the outside. So for Diaby, showing the bendability and the burst at his size and his weight that he plays at, that was the type of thing where I say maybe he's not the polished guy like Isaiah Foskey, but he does have good tape, 9 sacks from last year at Louisville in the ACC. So there's a lot to like. I don't think people are going to love him as maybe a day two guy yet, but 5th round or so, that's somebody that really might be worth taking a chance on if you feel like your coach can develop.
Yeah, indeed. I don't think he's ever going to be an NFL superstar, but he is definitely someone who can play in this league and contribute special teams and be a part of that defensive line rotation and surprise people every now and then with huge plays, because he has got a motor. And when I talked to him, his desire to just get better and better and better was so obvious. And you love guys like that in your locker room, and he just seems like a hell of a nice guy. Luke, have you had a chance to look at some wide receivers that might be of interest to the Bears?
For sure. Receiver was one where the group coming in to me was mostly, outside of maybe Rashee Rice, we're looking at a lot of like 3rd to 5th rounders at the top end. So if you're looking for value receivers, I think the Senior Bowl showed a lot of what you could get. I also think it showed that Stanford had a higher talent level than I thought this past year. So Michael White, receiver, he was really good in the game. And then Tank Dell, lots of separation that we saw from him. That blew a lot of people away. And I'm trying to temper my expectations on Dell. I think he's maybe a late 2nd round type of guy. But Rashee Rice, I liked his releases, his ability to go up and get the ball, and his route running was fairly crisp as well. So Rice is probably your most complete guy when you look at the NFL, which I don't think is too surprising. I thought it was a little weird to see Puka Nacua from BYU play one day and look incredible.
Yeah.
And then after that, we didn't really see him again. So I was like, how do we evaluate it one day without overreacting or going crazy? So those are some of the names that I think about. Jaden Reed showed some speed at Michigan State. I wouldn't mind him in maybe a 6th round type pick if I'm a team that wants to take a flyer on that. But really, Rice is the one that I say is most complete. Dell was the most exciting. And then Nakua, not sure how to evaluate that one day. Michael Wilson, really good in the game, couple of moments in practice. He seems like a good, maybe 4th round at best, but probably another 5th, 6th round type receiver as well.
Yeah. It seemed to me that a lot of the receivers were not done any favors by the quarterbacking in practices. So that was, I think, a part of the problem. Rice had some misconnections on day one. I thought overall Rice's day one was not too good. But as, every time I mention that to someone who's been to these all-star games forever, they say, hey, quarterback, wide receiver chemistry is not always non-existent on day one. So fair enough. Regarding Tank Dell, holy cow.
Yeah.
I mean, he doesn't need a quarterback. Just get the ball in his hand somehow. The guy was a monster, and he was so precise in his route running that, the Chicago Bears could definitely use a guy like him, because the Bears don't have his hopefully we'll see his play improve after an off season with the team. But basically what he does is he's got the big catch radius, and that's how he catches his passes. Darnell Mooney is a serviceable number 2A type of receiver, but this team really needs somebody who can create separation down in and down out. One of the biggest things a young quarterback needs is that reliable guy that can always get open, and Dell strikes me as somebody that can do that. It was funny that I was on Pro Football Network yesterday, so I said, I spent the week at the Senior Bowl. Let me do a mock draft and see what pops up and so forth. So it's day 3 in my mock, and I'm down to around round 6, maybe even 7. And so I'm looking for Tank Dell. Yeah, was he chosen? And it looks like he was chosen. And I'm still scrolling. And he was like ranked the 300 and something wide receiver. So apparently whenever they designed that Pro Football Network mock draft and loaded in the players, they never heard of Tank Dell, I bet. And so I think now they need to update that and make him a high day 3 type caliber pick, because that guy is going to be super in the NFL. There's no doubt in my mind.
Yeah, and there were some boards, like coming into the Senior Bowl, I have him, PFF had him number 46 overall.
Okay.
And I was like, I guess some boards had known, some hadn't, but I totally understand if you don't know, 5'8" receiver from Houston. I get it. Like, that's part of the reason we do a Senior Bowl, is we get to know these guys.
Exactly. Indeed.
Yeah, and just looking at Dell, the ability, there were a couple of plays where the quarterbacks, he'd have one where he burned a guy in the slot position, heads out towards the sideline, open by 5 yards, and the ball is just thrown out of bounds. And there would have been, I think it's important for people to know, there would have been more Tank Dell highlights of him making the catch at the end if the quarterbacks had thrown him just an anywhere near an accurate ball. That was disappointing. On